Blog Talk Radio.
We're gonna have a TV party tonight. Alright! We're gonna have a TV party, alright! Tonight! We've got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews. Everybody's gonna hang out here tonight. Alright! We'll pass out on the couch. Alright! Tonight! We got nothing better to do than watch TV.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to TV Party Tonight, brought to you by the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. I am your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight we're going to be doing something, as Jello Biafra once said, a little different. Now, if you've been following any of the Radulich and Broadcasting shows, you know we tend to deal with a lot of the pop culture, action-oriented, comic book type stuff, whether it's television shows, movies, comic books, etc. We typically don't deal in documentaries. We certainly don't talk about cooking shows. But tonight, that's going to change a little bit for a variety of reasons. So what we'll be talking about tonight is the 4-part Netflix documentary, Cooked, by author Michael Pollan. I've read a bunch of his books. First started with An Omnivore's Dilemma, which talked about the central topics seem to be, you know, what are you supposed to eat when the modern diet is crap, basically. And there are, I think I remember, it's been so long time since I've read the book, but the book was broken up into different sections, and each one was, I think, about like a different meal, and sort of the themes around those meals. One of which was dedicated to the modern industrial diet. I think him and his family went to go have cheeseburgers from McDonald's in the car, but I think he ate like a wild pig, and there was other stuff going on in the book, and it was great. I became a huge fan. That's not the best sell job I've ever done on a book, but suffice it to say, I read An Omnivore's Dilemma. It was a New York Times bestseller, and I became a fan of the author. I went back and I read Botany of Desire, and in 2013, he released a book called Cooked, A Natural History of Transformation, which kind of operates under the same motif, where it's broken up into different sections. This time, it's broken up into earth, air, fire, and water, and it details how each one of those elements influence the cooking process. Yeah, cooking with fire, cooking with air, etc. So, last year, his book was adapted into a 4-part Netflix series. Again, each episode, just like the sections in the book, there was a fire episode, air episode, water episode, earth episode. And over the course of the holiday season, I had a chance to finally sit down and watch it. Now, this came out last February, so it's almost a year old now, but I'm just now getting around to it. But I was really amazed by what I was watching. I mean, you know, reviews for the show have been a little iffy. I think the AV Club said that it was at both overwhelmed and underdeveloped, which I can see. But I mean, as far as something that I was watching purely for pleasure, and here's a secret about me, I really enjoy my cooking shows, whether they be Top Chef or stuff I watch with my daughter, like the Kids Baking Challenge, or another one we just got into, the Guy Fieri, Rachel Ray Kids Cook-Off Challenge. There was an underground barbecue challenge on Netflix that I watched a couple of months back. Man Fire Food, love that show. I used to love Man versus Food. Oh my God, that I binged. I think when I found it, and then I was addicted to that show. That poor bastard. Yes. By the third season, he was like, no mas. Other people need to do this now. I'm slowly killing myself. But at any rate, I really enjoy my cooking shows, and because I don't tend to watch them for the purposes of creating content for this network, I really can just kind of sit down and enjoy just on an entertainment level. But this cook show was something a little different for me. I saw it, and a lot of what Michael Pollan is talking about, and a lot of the books that I've read, and you have to understand, since going on in 2011, and subsequently regaining the weight and going back on the diet again, I have read a lot of books about health and food. Gary Taubes is another author I've really enjoyed and read his books. Why We Get Fat. Have not read Good Calories, Bad Calories. I've heard it's a bit dense, but Why We Get Fat is really, really good. It sits right on top of my shelf, right where I can get at it and use it for reference. The End of Overeating was another one that I read. So I tend not to read diet books as such. I read a lot, science of food. I read a lot about food creation, and I'm no expert on the subject, but I do enjoy Wheat Belly. That's another good one. I do enjoy reading a good book about what food does to us. I'm currently in the middle of a book about sugar and diabetes. I'll talk about that at the end of the show. Some recommendations that I have of things that I've read. So this is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. And Cooked really gets at that in a way that I thought was interesting to talk about. Because Michael Pollan is really trying to push the American culture, the American personality towards getting back into the kitchen. Because as I talked about in my diet diary last year, not just me, but many of us, especially as I would learn after I posted that and people were contacting me, we are very a grab and go society. We like it fast, we like it easy, and we need to keep it moving. And it's hard. Many of us are, we have families, we have children. We are living in two working parent homes, and it's not always easy to get, 3 home-cooked meals into your bodies with good products, fresh products that are not processed, overly salted, loaded with sodium, loaded with chemicals into our bodies. We talk about the quote-unquote obesity epidemic, and these are things that all lead to that. So it's difficult. And that's a big reason why I wanted to talk about this series, because, again, it goes to the greater conversation of what are we going to do as a society? Are we going to try to get back to the kitchen and improve our health? Or are we going to keep going down this road that leads to Wall-E? Basically, but fat people in chairs just zooming about. So I have a guest that we're bringing on to the show, I believe, for the first time. A first-time podcast, first time being on a podcast. Not even knew a podcast was, but she offered to come on the show and talk about Cooked with me, and I'm very anxious to bring her on and get her insight. She's approaching the show from the audience of someone who does cook for herself, not into the kitchen, and actually cook for her coworkers as well. So I'd like to bring on to the Radulich Broadcasting Network one of my coworkers, as a matter of fact, Miss Adrienne Wagner. How do you do?
Hi, how are you?
Hello. You there?
Hello. I was having some.
Hey, how
I'm
are
here.
you?
I was
All
having
right.
some technical difficulties, believe it or not.
Oh, if anyone listening to any one of my shows knows that technical difficulties are a big part of it.
I literally dropped my phone on the tile floor right as I was trying to call you. So I'm using my 8-year-old son's terrible cell phone, which for once I'm actually very glad that I have.
All right. This is going to make for a fun show. Well, thank you for coming on.
Yes, of course, of course. What did I miss?
I just gave an introduction to the show, to what Cooked is all about, who Michael Pollan is. I want to talk for a brief minute and ask you a couple of questions about your experience with cooking. Right as you were coming in, I was talking about how there's this push to get us back into the kitchen and cooking for ourselves because living the grab-and-go industrial diet is making us sick. It's creating a lot of disease. It's creating a lot of obesity. And so we're at sort of a crossroads where the information is out there. We know what we're supposed to do. We know what we're supposed to eat, but it really does run counter to the lifestyle that a lot of us are living. Full-time jobs and inability to find the time to do it, et cetera, et cetera. So why don't you just take a minute and tell the audience a little bit about yourself in terms of your cooking experience. I think you, if I remember correctly, you got into cooking a while back, and you seem to have really been engaged with the process.
Yeah, actually, there's a few interesting tidbits here, but first of all, I am, I'm not an expert cooker or baker by any means. I pretty much go by recipes, but my father is 100% Italian, and my mom is this little Southern belle from Birmingham, Alabama, but they were brought up, both of them, cooking. So, they both taught me different styles and different types of cooking, and it just kind of stuck with me. So, I've been doing it ever since, and I love to cook for myself, for people, whenever I have the time, and that's an issue, but when I have the time, I love it.
Now, do you like to cook strictly Italian, or do you experiment with other styles? Is there something that you sort of approached that you hadn't been taught and then sort of fell in love with?
I like different styles. I do love the Mediterranean flavor, but of course I'm also a vegetarian, so that puts a little spin on it, especially with the Italian part, because, Italians cook with a lot of meat.
Right.
So, my dad makes fun of me all the time, especially at holidays when we do have a lot of homemade food. So I'll have to, make my own meat alternative type and just kind of mix it with what they're doing a lot of the time. So I try to experiment with a lot of things, and being a vegetarian, it makes it hard because you have to try to think outside the box a lot for protein sources and for different vitamin sources. So I just try different things. If it looks good, I'm like, hey, let me try it.
I think it's a lot easier to find protein source when you're a vegetarian than when you're vegan, and it's a much more stricter diet. At least that's what I've been told. At least I think with vegetarians, there's still proteins you can get from beans and nuts, and there's all kinds of things you can do. I am a strict meat eater. If I could eat just any meat, I would.
Or a meatitarian, as my ex-husband would say.
Yeah, absolutely a meatitarian. I'm at that's the diet that I'm on right now. It's a ketogenic diet. Talked about on my diet diary where between 500 to 700 calories a day of protein. I'm really supposed to keep it the lean protein, so it's not like you're supposed to go into Wendy's and be like, bacon in me. Not how this is supposed to work.
Right.
But then you have either 2 servings of vegetables or a serving of fruit and a serving of vegetables per day, and you stay in ketosis, and and this is how you lose the weight very rapidly. And I know the first time I did relating to the subject, my wife was pregnant at the time with our now 6-year-old daughter, and I had to pretty much cook all my own meals in order to get the diet going. And I actually used to really love cooking for myself. It's time consuming, and I used to cook a lot of stuff at once for like a week, so that I could find that balance, that work-life balance between having the food available and being able to grab and go with my busy lifestyle.
Right.
And I really do love barbecue when I get the opportunity. Real cook with fire, as we'll talk about momentarily. The other stuff that he talks about, with water, air, and earth, not so much. Though I did find them interesting in the show. But yeah, fire. Anytime there's anything barbecue going on, anything with fire, I'm into it.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely puts an awesome flavor on things. So,
have you before I approached you about this and sort of threw it out there that this was a show I wanted to talk about? Hang on. I'm here. My computer froze momentarily. Repeat. I was asking before I had approached you about doing the show and talking about this subject, had you heard of Cooked or Michael Pollan in general?
I hadn't. No, I hadn't, and I'm really glad that I did it. But no, I hadn't heard a thing about it. I mean, again, just focusing on work and kids and stuff. I don't take the time, or I don't have the time to do a lot of reading. I mean, reading, watching documentaries, things like that. But it sounded really interesting to me, especially the way he puts it with the different elements. And I mean, I had seen in the past, I think it was called Food Inc., where it talked about the abuse of animals that we use for food and things like that. And then there was another one, I'm trying to remember, it was a while back, that I had also watched. So, but it was more focused on the abuse of animals, and then how GMOs and foods are mutated.
Yes, it's an interesting world we're living in. Food Inc. is actually on. Food Inc. is actually on my Netflix queue to watch. I said at the top of the show before you called in. The first book I read by Michael Pollan, how I discovered him, was with An Omnivore's Dilemma, the New York Times bestseller. And if you have the time to read it, I would absolutely recommend it. But I read Cooked when it first came out. I actually made it almost all the way through it. When it got to the part about baking, cooking with air, I was like, at that time, I was so anti-grain, I had just finished reading Wheat Belly, and I was like, no, the bread is the enemy. So, like, anything bakery and any baking, I was just anti. And I was actually listening to it as an audiobook. I lost interest in the book, and I never finished it. Something I want to go back and actually just read now. I don't want to just listen to it. But having seen that there was this documentary on Netflix, I was like, you know what? I'm going to give this a chance here and see what he did with it, because I like the guy. I was just having a hard time with the book, with up to that point with the book Cooked. But I do recommend it for people. If you haven't read it, if you don't have natural prejudices against bread, it's a good read. Excuse me. It's a good read. He's a very engaged author. We're going to take a quick pause for the cause here, and I'm going to play the trailer for Cooked as a sort of jumping off point for us to start talking about this. So it's a little less than 2 minutes here, and sort of really explains the show better than I ever could. And then we'll get right into this, okay?
All right.
So here we go.
We all have powerful memories of being cooked for. That act of generosity and love, I think, is still in there for most of us, and is very powerful. The meal is this incredible human institution. When we learned to cook is when we became truly human. But we've lost touch, I think, with how that food got to our plates. I was going to do kind of a deep dive into cooking and learn how to do it. I started with fire because that's where cooking begins.
If you eat meat like this, you find out how good really good meat is.
We're taking things that aren't immediately delicious and working flavor into them.
If someone says, you shouldn't eat gluten, I would say, well, prove it.
A decomposition, creating wonderful flavor. It's a promise of something better.
This is more important than people realize. When you let a corporation cook your food, they cook differently than people do. You have an industry that is trying to undermine cooking as an everyday practice.
And if I lose that tradition of cooking, I've actually lost knowledge.
For me, it's sort of like a rite of passage that was taught to me by my grandfather and my father, and taught to them by their parents.
In a kernel of grain, there's everything to support a whole life.
Is there any practice less selfish?
My mother did this.
Any time less wasted than preparing something delicious and nourishing for the people you love?
So I have to ask, first, you're going into a cold, like, all right, so this wacky guy I work with wants me to watch this documentary. What's going on here? And within minutes of the first episode, you're in I think it's Australia, and they're setting a field on fire and killing lizards. And I have to ask, what was your first thought? Was it text me and go, what the hell, Radulich? What are you doing?
Actually, no. It was quite the opposite. I got hooked immediately, and I'm not a big documentary person at all. I mean, something, normally I'd prefer fiction, or I'd prefer, drama or something like that to a documentary. So when I first started watching, I was hooked within minutes, and it was amazing. And I honestly watched every episode twice already, and I've taken notes, and it was really interesting. So I didn't think that at all. Exact opposite.
Oh, good. All right. I want some of these notes that you took. What are some of the observations, some of these notes, just right off the bat, that you're passionate about, that you want to talk about?
Well, I broke it down by episode because, of course, I'm OCD. But with the first part is with the fire, when he said, when Pollan said, we learned, or we became human when we learned to cook. I thought that was amazing. People don't really think about that, like humans, is learning to cook with fire. That's what separated us from the rest of the animal kingdom.
Yeah, I thought cultural anthropology and just the arc of human existence,
right,
is something I'm fascinated by. There's a great book, again, another New York Times bestseller. I think it actually might have won the Pulitzer, called Guns, Germs, and Steel, and it goes to that idea of of how humanity evolved, and what Guns, Germs, and Steel, and how that created the great wealth of the West versus the East having to play catch up, and things are relatively, well, not. I don't want to say they're relatively equal, because in a lot of places they're not, but certainly you're absolutely right, and he brings that up. The idea of cooking with fire is what sort of brought us out of the muck and mire, and was the first brick towards laying the foundation of humanity. So human civilization is really, really fascinating, because you wouldn't, in the whole concept of and I don't want to skip around too much, but these two link. How another brick in the foundation of civilization might have been beer. Beer is what is what got us into farming. which is awesome.
Exactly. Yep. Mm-hmm. That humans thought of alcohol before food.
Yes, I love the idea humanity civilization has its roots in us being drunken frat boys. It's great.
Yep. Yep.
and you and I, we work professionally in the field of psychology. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way. It seems more like daycare.
Right.
But yes, we are dealing in psychology, and I think the human mind is a fascinating thing in that we could be hunter-gatherers and we could be farmers, but what we really want is to get drunk. So can we do that? Can we base an entire civilization just so that we have the resources to get shit-faced? Can we do that? That's an amazing thing to me.
Yep. Let's settle here just so we can be still enough to grow grain so we can ferment alcohol.
Right. It's all about our body. So there are aspects of that episode. So he focuses on folks who leave their modern society, Australia, they go back into the bush, and they hunt as their ancestors did. They hunt these lizards, and they eat these lizards that are fire roasted over an open. Awesome to watch. If you can separate of like killing animals right then and there, it's an awesome display to watch. And one of the things I'm really into, and I want to get your opinion on this, is this rising tide of type 2 diabetes in this country. And we have medications to treat it, and it's just, it's an ongoing problem. Now we have kids with diabetes. That's a rising thing as well. And one of the things that's said in this is that within a few days of being back in the bush and getting back to their natural diets and being physical as they used to, going out and hunting these lizards, they don't have nearly the health problems they do once they go back to their modern civilized lives, quote unquote civilized lives. What did you think of that? Just this idea that, diabetes is this imminently curable plague by just simply eating right and getting exercise. You don't actually need, or you may not actually need the medicine, and it's on display right there in that situation.
It's scary actually, because it sounds so simple and it seems so simple. Like that's all they had to do was just go back to where they came from and go back to eating these natural, non-processed foods. And it seems so easy, but we can't do it. And I don't know that, I don't know why. I mean, we could talk for hours about that. And I mean, it'd be good to kind of brainstorm it a little bit, and that's where, to me, not to go too far ahead, but in the end, it's like, okay, I've got all this information. Now what? What do we do now?
You ever, just in the course of your daily life or work or whatever, or a social event, and you're given this knowledge, you've read a book, you've seen a documentary like this one, and you're like, okay, man, I've got all this great information, and you walk in, and everyone's just eating poison. It's lovely, delicious poison, and
all around us.
And I don't know if you're, and if you're like me, you're like half like I would. It's like 1/3 on the strength of all of you, 1/3. I want to try to save you from yourself, and 1/3 get out of the way. That looks delicious.
Right. Exactly. Can I at least lick it?
Yeah. Exactly. Let me see your food. Let me smell it. Before we move on from fire to water, I want to get one of your other notes that you have for fire. But I got to ask, did the pig make your mouth water when a vegetarian ate a pig and was like, damn, that's good? You just like, I just won't be vegetarian one time, and I gotta try this roast pig.
Yep, that was funny. No, actually, I mean, and it's a little different. I think that woman in the video, from what I'm gathering, she had been a vegetarian for a really long time. So it was like she was tasting this pig meat, for the first time in her life, or maybe since she was little. But, I've only been a vegetarian for 9 years, maybe on and off. I would say 5 straight, but 9 on and off. And so, I can remember what it tastes like. And so for me, it wasn't like, oh, I've got to taste that. But it was interesting to see her reaction. It was like she was tasting gold or something.
What made you decide to become a vegetarian?
Actually, it's a funny story, of course. My pregnancies, both of my pregnancies, I would say led to it. Now, I had several friends that were vegetarian anyway. I had one friend that was a vegan, and she had just recently become a vegan. And, of course, so she was pushing that a lot. And I had watched those videos. I watched Food Inc. and the other video, which I wish I could remember, but I can't remember. But so just, the cruelty to animals and things like that. And I had thought about it for a while. But the actual turning point was when I was pregnant with my son, I was making a meatloaf. And, I was mushing the raw meat around in my hands, and it made me sick. And so that was the starting point of it, and it just stuck with me.
Do you find it difficult to maintain a vegetarian lifestyle just in the natural course of your daily routine, or have you found it to be, the world pretty accommodating?
It's pretty accommodating these days. My biggest thing is I have to be careful with the carbs because there's, carbs are everywhere, and that's an easy fix. Processed foods and carbs are my biggest battle. There are meat substitutes all around you. It's just you've got to, if you want to pick the healthy ones, you've got to plan, and you've got to take more time, and it costs more money, so.
It definitely takes planning, and money helps. Let me get your last, whatever notes you got, just fire them off. Tell me whatever else you were thinking about fire.
Okay, so let's see. Let me grab my little tablet here. Okay, fire. We talked about, we're the only species that cooks. This is when we became human. It talked a little bit about the evolution in the Homo erectus, which I thought was cool, how we had a much smaller jaw than, the apes, and our muscles were a lot weaker for chewing, and our brains were a lot bigger. So he talked about how we need a lot of food for brain energy. So it's just, it's more than about food, really. It's about civilization, the start of civilization. It makes you kind of question, why were all those things done? Why did we evolve that way? Is it all about food or somewhat about food? And why is food so important, with humans? But so that was a little bit. And then going back to the traditions with, when the people went back to the bush and when they baptized that baby by fire, but it brought back other things, like they were storytelling and so other things. So it just brought back old traditions from those people, how they got back to the land. So I thought that was really, really cool.
I agree. Two things I can relate to that. There's a book I read not that long ago called it was about the history of barbecue. And one of the things they talked about was how, especially in this country, barbecues are actually political events. Going to the late 1700s and such. If you were, rallies were around barbecues, and there's a lot of detail in the books about, slaves digging ditches and pits that the meat was cooked in, and the kinds of food that were served at these things. But yeah, they were political events. They were social events. The idea of a large cooked meat festival really brought people together and created communities and created, in a lot of ways, political movements. And they were at the crux of a lot of ideas that blossomed out of these gatherings. So, barbecue, cooking by fire, it's a huge tradition in America on every level that you can think of, not just food, but, social, economic, psychological. Barbecue is, as much a foundation of, we'll just limit it to this country, as any number of things you can think of. And now that links right up to what he was saying in that episode. But the other thing, my family did not teach me to cook. They taught me to microwave. That's how I got this outrageous, rocking body that I've got today, folks. Eating out of boxes and microwaves and shit. But
it's nuclear.
Yes, I was on the nuclear diet. But my Nana, my Italian grandmother, she cooked. And I can't necessarily say like she. First of all, there was no talking. There was no teaching me anything, but she did cook me things. And my most positive memories. This is going to sound like such a fat guy statement, but trying to be somewhat sentimental and linked to the story. My most positive memories of growing up and childhood were centered around the meals that my grandmother made, my meals that my Nana made. And when she died, I kind of thought all those memories were going to go with her. I would never have the fresh fish sauce that she made with spaghetti. I would never have her sausage and peppers or her peppers and eggs sandwiches that she would make. These were, regardless of how they might sound, to the outside, these were things I grew up with. Big Italian meals that she would make, and they were delicious. And I never thought I would have them again. But I have talked about this with my mother-in-law, who couldn't be the furthest thing from Italian. And she has gone out of her way every Christmas to make sure she tries to at least approximate based on my weak explanations of these things. My grandmother's Italian dishes. She brings them to Christmas. This past year, at my insistence, she actually brought Italian sausage and peppers, and it made my holiday. Wife couldn't have cared less.
Amazing.
She's not a huge fan of the Italian sausage, and not huge fans of onions, and there were definitely some issues here. But it was a cool thing for my mother-in-law to do, and she really does go out of her way to make me happy by keeping my grandmother's traditions as alive as she can, especially around the holidays.
Well,
so I certainly appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think we're all that way. I mean, we all celebrate things around food. The holidays. A big portion of our holidays are very revolved around food. So I think it's tradition for all of us, and it means something for all of us. That's just, that's our tradition. American, all cultures, I think. It's,
absolutely.
You can pick any culture, and we all have some kind of tradition or something based around food.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because that's a big part of episode 2, water, where we go over to India, and and it's funny, like the first episode, fire, barbecue, meat, very exciting things for me. I'm enraptured, just sitting at the edge of my couch. Yes, bring it on. And then we get to the next one. Let's talk about soup, everybody. Oh, for fuck's sake. Okay, so. I'm trying to get into it. I'm gonna actually let you talk it up here, because I went into this, and I'm not gonna say it's a bad episode. It's very, very good, and I definitely want to talk about focus on India, and the kinds of things that they were doing. But just right off the bat, I was like, oh no, I don't want a whole episode on soup and boiling. But you were excited.
I thought it was, I was. I thought it was really interesting, because in that episode he talked how water created the birth of cuisine. So it's not just cooking, but like fine cooking. So I thought that was cool. And one of the things he said was, without water to soften, you still have your plants, you still have your meat, and then you still have your spices, which is going to be the same thing with with fire, but what he said was flavors won't mix without water to soften them. So it's a different way to kind of mix all your flavors and make new flavors for your palate. So, of course, I was like, oh, so great. So cool.
The thing that rang out to me the most in this goes back to the conversation we were having earlier about trying to get that work-life balance while maintaining a healthy eating lifestyle. And as I said to my wife the other day, nature abhors a vacuum. If there's the thing that when people talk about the American dream and what makes, they're alluding to the idea that we're one of the easiest places, or at least we were, one of the easiest places in the world for someone to have an idea, fill a niche, fill a need, fill a hole in the economy with a service or a product and make $1 million off of it. And here we have a situation in India where you have all these people leaving the traditional work, leaving traditional lifestyles, and moving up in the modern global economy, going to work in businesses. The stereotypical, the call center, but India is much more than call centers, everyone. They're just people are going to work, and they're having the same problem that you and I and every other Westerner has: is what the fuck am I supposed to do if I'm out of work in a 12-hour day? And here you have this woman who basically started a catering service. She makes home cooked meals in these huge vats, and she just sells them to people. And it's like a one-man operation, basically. But she makes a pretty good living off of this. And I'm like, that's awesome. That's the kind of thing I love to see.
Yeah, and she sends, it's almost like it's the way you think of like Pizza Hut delivery, but the healthy, traditional way, because like you said, she's making a bunch of food for a bunch of people, and then she bags it all up, or they put it in those containers, which I would love to find some of those here. I've never seen anything like that here. And then she sends them off with this guy on his bike. And he's like the delivery guy.
And everyone gets a home-cooked meal with local ingredients, fresh ingredients, ingredients that have not been processed, filled with salt, for to keep it fresh or whatever. No GMOs, no nothing, just fresh product from the land, from the area, in a bowl in your mouth. And I'm like, man, that's brilliant. And I struggle to think, like, is there anything really like that in modern America without, like, besides the farmer's market? Where do you go? If you if you go to work tomorrow and here's you get your half an hour break and you got to go get your lunch, where are you going to go? Where do you go to get that fresh meal?
Right, exactly. And I think it's very difficult to do that here, but I think we're taking steps. We're not close to there. Not close, but places like Wow That's Fresh, you can get drive-through fresh food where they don't have microwaves, they don't have the food under heat lamps, and it's supposed to be fresh food.
It's a funny and a scary thing, and I'll tell you why. Most of the food that we eat in any establishment, from like McDonald's to your average restaurant, your bar and grills, your Chili's, your Applebee's, etc., they all order like the same place, Cisco. And I know that because I don't know if you remember the lion taco issue that was all the rage in Tampa there for a bit. Oh, let me tell you a story. So, there was a taco joint down in South Tampa, and I don't remember the name of the place now, but they made the news because they were doing these weird game meat tacos. And one of them that he was serving that got everybody all hot and bothered and got a lot of attention for a while was he was serving lion tacos. Lion. Rawr.
Oh my God.
Delicious, by the way.
Of course you tried them. Of course you did.
Oh, are you kidding me? I ate them while watching the UFC. I was having a very manly moment. But yeah, man, I was talking to the guy. I was like very interested in his story. I'm like, all right, so like, where do you? Because people are like, oh my God, he's killing like he's out there with a spear, poaching lions in the African, safari or whatever. And he was like, yeah, no, man, we ordered the lion meat from Cisco. Like, oh, well, that's hardly that's hardly an interesting story. It's like, yeah, you can get pretty much there are game meat farms scattered hither and thither across the United States and and around the world where they raise wild game. Well, it wouldn't be wild then, would it? They raise non-traditional,
domesticated, once wild.
Yeah. Forcefully domesticated, formerly wild game, like lions. And he was like, yeah, they actually come from a lion farm in Chicago. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me.
Oh my God. A lion farm in Chicago. In between what? The skyscraper?
I didn't ask for an address, but he was like, yeah, man, they raise the lions on this like plot of land somewhere in, I guess, some Chicago, somewhere in Illinois, and they're slaughtered for their meat, and the meat is then sold to Cisco, and Cisco sells it wherever. I'm like, that's amazing. Only in America, baby.
Yeah, America.
They've gone out of business since then. By the way, it didn't last very long after that.
So people didn't like the lion tacos?
I think it became a matter of. It became a very political thing. People were very much no matter what explanation he gave, nothing was good enough. And then it just became cost prohibitive to keep doing gimmicks. So they went out of business. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was the most resonant thing about the episode for me. He's making a stew in this one, isn't he? Some sort of stew or whatever. I don't remember what he's making in this episode.
Yep.
Okay.
He was working with this, and they were talking more about the cuisine. It was some kind of a French stew that he was working with this French woman, and they were just working with different meats and spices and plants and I guess I don't remember, bouillon and different broths and things to basically do stews.
I'm sorry. Okay, I wasn't sure if you were done there. So lay it on me. What are your notes here? What was resonant for you in the water episode?
Well, a lot of stuff we already touched on. Another little interesting piece that he harped on time a lot. That's the missing ingredient in our cooking is time. And so it's changed our food a lot. And the he reported were that Americans spend approximately 27 minutes a day now in food preparation. And that's less than any other country on the planet and less than half of what it was in the 1960s. So we've cut our food preparation more than in half than we were, 50 years ago, 60 years ago.
Oh, I believe it. I went grocery shopping for my wife this afternoon after I got my son out of his pre-K prep class. He wanted a treat. I'm like, all right, we'll go to Publix, get you the freaky, and then I can get my Powerade. While I'm there, I texted my wife, hey, man, I know you said you needed stuff for lunch, so lay it on me. What's the list? I'm a good husband. Grocery shopping for the wife. And I'm modest. Can you tell? So
you are very modest.
Exactly. So she sends me this, and as of, I'm getting the stuff for her and my daughter for lunches because they're the ones that really need it. I eat nothing these days. And I walk past the deli counter, and of course, there's next to the deli counters there's always like the hot area where they sell the rotisserie chickens, and I grabbed one for dinner. I figured this will cut down on dinner prep tonight. I'll just grab a rotisserie chicken. And I texted her back like I cooked and sent her a picture of it. Cooks was in quotations, by the way. I prepared a chicken. And by prepare, I mean I bought the thing cooked already. But that's what he's talking about right there. That's an example of, you know, that left her to just make some cauliflower and rice, I believe, you know, for sides. But he's absolutely right. You know, when you get home at 5 or 6 o'clock and you're trying to feed your family, get baths going, and get your kids in bed by 8 o'clock, it doesn't leave a lot of time, you know, to do these long, elaborate meals unless you really plan ahead. So
absolutely.
I cooked. I cooked a rotisserie chicken.
Yeah, it took you all of 2 minutes to pull the chicken apart, right? To open the box and pull the chicken apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there you go. Right.
All right. Anything else on water?
I think this episode was the one that talked about like World War II and then the feminist revolution where women started working, and that kind of is processed food. And where he talked about like Spam and the fruit cocktail, whatever that like jelly mold of fruit crap was that you put out with Spam, and you call it like a harvest. I don't remember, a harvest something. It was awful.
Yeah.
But they catered to, you know, the women, and even though and women, you know, started working, but it still wasn't nearly as much as it is today. But they also catered to overworked, overtired housewives. Like, just relax and sit down. We have a TV dinner, so you can just pop it in, you know, the oven or the microwave for your family, and then you can sit down and find out what's going on in the real world.
Isn't it amazing we convinced a generation of people that it was overwhelming to cook?
Yes, absolutely. It's terrible.
You know, we introduced an idea into culture that doing something as satisfying, this is tiring. Go do something fun, like watch TV.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so that really got to me a lot in that episode.
We've had a fun history in this country. It's, you know, when you really look at it like this, it's like, what the hell, man?
Yeah.
That's why I love books like, you know, and shows like this. You learn so much about how we got to this place, where we are now. All right, so episode 3, moving things right along. We have air, my nemesis.
Air.
Bread. Baking. Ah.
Bread is evil. Bread is evil. It's carbs. It's empty calories.
But boy, you know, my friend Dean, he had watched this, and he was like, wait till you get to the bread episode. You know, and you know, he's a guy that's working. He's lifting weights and everything, and our family trips to Disney together. You know, him and his wife and 2 kids, and my wife and my 2 kids. Excuse me. We, you know, we actually talked about a bunch of different things, and he was just like, yeah, he's like, yeah, man, we're trying to cut down the carbs too. And then you watch a show like Cooked and get to the bread episode, and you're like, what am I missing? Oh no.
Yeah, these beautiful fluffy clouds of flour and water. Yep.
I have to say, watching it was much more appealing than reading about it.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Excuse me. Pardon me. One thing I can say right off the bat, and this episode talks about it, this was brought up in Wheat Belly, which is very much anti-wheat. But it does go to something that you have to consider when you're thinking about, okay, well, we got to cut bread out, we got to cut the carbs, and that is, there is such a thing as good bread, good grain for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The problem has become, and this is a reoccurring theme, that the bread you're buying in the grocery store is shit for the most part. You know, Wonder Bread, for example, being a big culprit, is this garbage bread made with, you know, chemicals and various elements, rocks basically. It's fed in rocks essentially.
Yeah, preservatives that you can't pronounce the names of. It's like 30 letters each word.
Right. So, yeah, that's all garbage bread. And it's going to increase your sugar levels. This is the stuff that leads to diabetes. But
yep, absolutely.
Bread with none of that stuff in limited quantities, it's actually very good for you. If you look at the modern food pyramid, which I think is actually like a pie chart now, there is a place in our diet for bread. It's just not what we were, contemporary in age. We're pretty close. I say mine. We all grew up with which at the bottom was bread. The base of the food pyramid was the shitty bread that they're pushing on us, which is of course led in a lot of ways to the diabetes epidemic. But that was a big part of it. If you made proper bread and you were able to buy a proper bread and eat it in the quantities suggested nowadays, it's actually not bad for you. It's something that your body needs. Is the problem. Just not a bread. And that would be because I've eaten garbage bread for most of my life, and when I get a decent bread, it's actually pretty good. But so what were your thoughts on air? And are you a bake? I want to know, are you was this appealing to you because you actually do the thing?
It was, that episode was interesting in a going along the patterns of the other episodes. It talked about how, well, first of all, he said bread means life. And he was talking about how if you take just flour and you take just water and you try to eat that for, I guess, 2 weeks or 3 weeks at a time, you're not going to survive. But if you add air and you make it into bread and that's all you had to eat, you could survive on that. So, it just brings it back to the pattern that he's talking about, how if you go back to natural sources, our food, the way it was grown and the way it was meant to be, it can sustain you. It can keep you alive if you have nothing else. So that part, really spoke to me, again, as in the other two episodes.
Okay. And this one, he actually bakes a loaf of bread. I don't know what kind.
Yep.
He bakes his own bread in this episode. It is a fun thing to watch. I don't know if I have the patience for that sort of thing, but I did enjoy watching him do it. It's also it's a very exact thing, with the cooking with fire and all of that. You didn't have to be so precise, but the a little more of this and a little less of that, and you've got nonsense on your hands, just mess.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything else? What were your notes on that?
Well, and I didn't take as many notes on this one. I'm not quite sure why, but I really liked the French guy who was making his own bread, and he said, if you use my bread, or Pollan said, if people were to eat his bread and only his bread, people that have like gluten sensitivities or gluten allergies, I bet those would disappear. So it again speaks to that common theme about how we're putting all this crap in our food and ruining it, and we're getting all these diseases, and we're creating our own diseases.
I am a big proponent, sometimes to a fault, of natural cures and diet. I talk about it with, at work a lot. People, I don't push any of this on people. I will only answer questions when asked. But, I talk all the time, in terms of health and weight loss, whatever. Like if you change diet and eat this, not that, in the actual book, you will experience significant change over time.
Yeah.
You will help yourself. And the reaction I get to that is, yes, but what do you have that will work quicker and cheaper? And then I just walk away.
Yeah.
And then that is the struggle. Anything else on air?
The other piece that I really liked in the air episode was how they talked about, and I guess was this I don't know if it was Morocco, Egypt, I can't remember, but where they used bread to kind of expand the rest of their meal. So they took like loaves of bread and they brought the rest of their food, their meat and their vegetables, and when they mix them together, it can feed a lot more people. So it's more economical, I guess, and it was still healthy because they were baking their own bread. I mean, these women spent hours and hours and days baking their bread, and then they would send it to, send it off with their son to go to the community baker, and then he would, bake it for them and then send it back to them. But it would make your meal last a lot longer or feed a lot more people. So I thought that was really cool.
I'm into the show on Netflix. I'm not going to do a TV party on it, but just some of the stuff I'm going to watch just for shits and giggles. Oh, come on now. I'm into this show called Street Food from Around the World. And the first episode, I believe, was in Istanbul, and like everything was on bread. And I was telling my wife about it. I was like, not for nothing, but at some point, I'm going to like travel. I'm going to have to give up this idea of I'm not eating bread, because I can't be walking into, these street vendors in Istanbul going, can I get that lettuce wrap, please? Because they'll beat me to send.
Sorry, I'm on Adkins right now, right? I'm doing Adkins. Do you have something else?
It's like, just totally an American attitude. I'm on a keto diet, sir. Can you wrap that lamb in lettuce for me? Thanks. Not going to go well for me. I have to. I'm going to have to
probably
keep
not.
shit on bread.
Yep.
All right. We're winding down to our last episode. This was interesting. Earth. Microbes. Now, they focused on a non-meat delight for me. Something I'm very fond of, Miss Wagner. Something that makes me, next to my children, it gives me get in the morning, and that's cheese. God, glorious cheese.
Glorious cheese.
Oh, God. There's not a cheese I don't love. I have to be honest with you. Even if it's stinky, smelly cheese, I love it all.
Yeah.
Mozzarella.
Yeah.
I'll be here for the next hour if I do this any longer. So let me pull it back. But they make cheese in this episode. He visits a nunnery, and the head nun, and they are making fresh cheese and doing studies and publishing papers. And I'm like, man, that's somebody I really admire. Somebody who's deeply committed to their religion. And I don't want to go off on a whole tangent here. I'm just going to make a blunt statement and sort of blink and let's move on. But this idea that you can't find a reconciliation between science and belief is really thrown on its face in this episode, because some of the most devout followers of a Catholic nuns, okay, people, Catholic nuns, not known for their devil-may-care opinions of religion here. These are committed folks. And one of them, a microbiologist, sitting there with her computers and her magnifying glasses and writing papers and studying stuff and making cheese, baby, making that cheddar. And this time I'm not talking about money. And I'm like, yeah, see that? See, you can believe in Jesus and still believe in science. What's wrong with you people? So anyway, I loved that aspect of this episode. That was some damn fine looking cheese. What did you think of it?
It was. That was some pretty cheese, very pretty cheese, and she was, she was very proud of it. I thought it was a really good episode. And the fact that she had to kind of fight with, was it the FDA or somebody was trying to shut her down because of her, her wooden vats that she was making this cheese in. And when they did, they took a deeper look into it, it's like, oh, well, actually, these old wooden vats that you're using didn't increase E. coli percentage at all. And when compared with, I guess, steel vats or other things that we use now. And so they backed off like, okay, go ahead and make your cheese, lady.
Right. You're not killing people. Are bad. Proceed. That on a political level, on just a going against conventional wisdom, sticking a in the eye of the government, all of those things. I mean, who would think that a nun making cheese would be a political statement? But it really was.
Yeah.
And, that's some political ass cheese right there. But I dug it, man. That was part of the episode that really had me invested. It started to lose me towards the end. I'm not gonna lie. By the end of the Earth episode, I was like, I'm having a rough time staying with this. But that aspect of it, I really liked. I don't remember. Was he making in this one? Do you recall?
What kind of cheese was she making?
What he makes something in every episode, and I don't remember what he makes. Oh, he does.
One. Well, he was talking. He was doing something with beer. I guess they were
right.
brewing beer. But did he make cheese also? I want to say he did, but I don't. You're right. I don't remember that part. But he did. He talked about he and his son made some beer that was drinkable, but by no means great. So then they found this other guy who did microbrews and stuff, and they talked with him a lot about beer and fermentation.
Right. Yeah, this is I remember I used to be part of this parents group, and the women would do their thing and talk about various things, and all the guys talked about was brewing their own beer, and I wanted to drown myself in the guy's pool. It's the least interesting thing I've ever heard. But it's a big deal, man. People like to brew their own beer, and and people get really into it. So God, that's what your passion is. I realized I got D's in chemistry, not into it. But that's what they're talking about in that episode. Fermentation, using microbes. This last bit of element that helps create these wonderful, different foods. That's a little bit off the beaten path. It's not fire, it's not air, it's not water, it's parasites, microbes.
Bugs.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, and he says it's the only cooking method that doesn't need heat. So I thought that was really interesting too. You don't need heat to ferment. Time, I guess, and bugs.
Yeah, and the right tools for the job. What were some notes on this episode?
I didn't put a lot in this episode either. I think I got kind of tired of the note taking, I got to say. But he talked about how a lot more foods in our diet are fermented than we think. And so he was talking about things like alcohol, chocolate, ketchup, salami, kimchi, and actually he did. I believe he made some kimchi in this, didn't he? Or he was doing something with kimchi. But it talked a lot about that, how you just need the earth and time to make certain foods and even, alcohol work.
All right. So overall, we have come to the glorious conclusion here. Give me your just overall impressions of Cooked.
I thought it was, like I said in the beginning, I was actually pretty amazed. At first, I thought it was just going to be, about cooking and learning different styles of cooking, which it was, but it was much deeper than that. It talked about, for lack of a better term, life and death and what we've done to ourselves as a society, looking back at old world techniques of cooking and making food and consuming food, and ultimately how it's going to lead to our demise and how it's caused so many terrible illnesses in our people.
You gonna pitch this to somebody? You're gonna start telling people, man, I saw this thing called Cooked. You should watch it, or are you just gonna be like, you know what? I don't know, man. I don't know if I need to talk about this with somebody else.
I will. I think it really spoke to me actually. So I am. I think I'll talk about it and I'll try. I'm one of those people too, where I'm not going to shove it down your throat kind of thing, but I'll be like, hey, did you know, maybe you should watch that show and, make some changes in your lifestyle. And of course it's always going to, keep me questioning things that I do every day. Like, it'd just be easier to nuke this little kid cuisine for my kids. And especially being, a single mom with 2 little kids, a working single mom, it's so much easier to take, $1 kid cuisine and throw it in the microwave and be like, okay, here's dinner, than it is to actually cook stuff and take the time to prepare stuff and spend the money on, healthier foods in their natural environment that haven't been mutated into this, these, God, I don't even know, fruit cocktail food. And Spam, right?
Yeah. It's the whole Frankenfood. Last year I cooked a couple of times for my family. I made sure that everyone had a hot dinner when they came home, and with my kids are significantly younger than yours. They were 5 and 2 when it was happening, and it's a little disheartening because even when I think you really when especially that young, with their underdeveloped palates, they you put all this effort into making this food for them. It's like, look, man, I made you these fresh meals, with good product, and they just like, can I just have a hot dog? It's like, oh, girl,
exactly.
All right.
Oh my God, where are the chicken nuggets and the mac and cheese? What is this crap?
Yeah, I offer you filet mignon. I offer you grilled asparagus with hollandaise sauce, and I'll have some chicken nuggets, please. All right. Yep. It's a struggle.
Daily struggle. It's a daily struggle. It really is. And I even tried the other night, like, I'll try like a happy medium. Like they had these frozen spinach tots that were organic spinach tots, but they're frozen. So I just put them in the oven. They're already prepared. And my kids are like, what is this? So,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yep. We have a drawer full of Lunchables in our refrigerator right now. I'm not going to lie and say that's not happening.
Yeah. Nope. I'm there. I'm there with you.
All right. My last question for you, and then we're going to wrap, is, so what's next? What did this inspire you to, if anything, to read or watch next?
There is another documentary kind of along the same lines that I've been wanting to watch for a while. I think it's called Forks and Knives. And it, it's similar. It talks about, more natural foods versus GMO foods and what we're actually doing to our foods, even our fruits and vegetables. And I guess this really opened my eyes to, I really, truly don't know what they're doing to our food. We really have no freaking idea what these companies like Cisco and, whoever sells to Publix and wherever we're shopping, what are they really doing to our food?
Right.
So I really want to learn more and educate myself.
Yeah, and it's not like they're all like there's some guy with a twisty black thin mustache and a top hat. Like, I will put all the poisons in this. Mwah. It's not like that per se.
Right. Per se.
It's the idea of we have a food. It's in this part of the world. We needed to get it to that part of the world, and we need it not to go bad, or this whole operation is pointless. And so they put preservatives in there. Think about that word, preservative. They're preserving the food for transportation. It's the basis of the global economy at this point. We have to feed the world, from these different areas, but it comes with a cost. Everything is about cost benefits. as I like to explain to many of our clients. You know, there's a cost and a benefit to what we're doing here, folks. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But I've actually used my benefit of what you're doing. You know, and
it's a whole different Oprah show.
Yeah, it is. But like I said, so yes, we can feed the world, and we can have all this great food that was once very local, very regional, and we can give it to the world. We can send it as far and wide as you could possibly imagine. But it's going to cost you a little bit of your health.
We have to put a whole bunch of shit in it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we're going to come to a close here. And this is usually the part of the show here in the Radulich Broadcasting Network that we call plugs. And that's because, you know, I just promote my own shows, but I'm always having people on that have their own podcasts, and, you know, they've got their stuff going on. Now, you do not do a podcast. You were brand new and exciting to this whole process here. So I got to ask you, number one, what was this like for you tonight? How did you feel?
It was good. You know, I like to hear myself talk sometimes, especially if I feel educated about a particular topic. So I'm happy to do it.
Well, you have now been placed on you are on the list of podcasts that I will actually invite back and don't want to punch in the face. So
yay!
Good for you.
Goals. It's squad goals, you know.
Yeah, exactly. You know, the dubious honor of not aggravating me on my own podcast. Good for you. So, what I'm saying here in my own inimitable way, you have an open invitation to come back anytime if something passionate that you want to talk about, you know, a television show, a movie, a book, recipe, whatever you want. Just let me know ahead of time and we will work something out. I know later on in the year, I do want to have you back on this particular show to talk about at least a season of Weeds. So we'll figure that out to August. And I think if planning it now would, you know, from September through December would be a little psychotic, just a smidgen. So you know, we'll figure out something later in the year. But like I said, I also have the other show, you know, Because Name Made Me. And you threw out something that made all my guy friends quiver in their boots. You apparently want to make me watch some sort of chick flick. I'm telling you right now, if you make I know where you be, lady. If you make me watch 50 Shades of Grey, you're going to get punched in the arm.
Oh, come on.
But I am open to whatever your suggestions are. You don't have to come up with something right now. But anytime you want to make me watch a movie and review it and talk about it with me, at pretty much any time, Thursdays. So just you name it and we'll do it.
All right. We'll open up our female audience base a little bit more. So if nothing else, they can just laugh at how men, you know, perceive and talk about chick flicks. So I'm looking forward to it. Great.
All right. Very cool. Is there, I know, like I said, you don't do like a show or a website or anything, but is there a place that you go for recipes that you would like to plug?
Allrecipes.com has some really good recipes. Okay. And of course, a lot of them come from parents, grandparents. I mean, I've got these old index cards from, you know, my Italian grandmother. So, you know, so not a lot there, but allrecipes.com usually doesn't disappoint. And actually, I get some of my recipes, and where I started with some of my vegetarian type recipes was PETA, believe it or not, PETA.org. They make the best, or they have the best vegan Caesar salad recipe ever.
Wow. See? That's why I asked you.
Believe it or not.
Instagram, any of you, do you use Instagram any of your finished dishes?
I do not. The most tech savvy I get with it, as you've seen, is I'll take a picture of it and put it on Facebook and show the work people like, hey, this is what I'm making for tomorrow. So that's as far as I've gone at this point.
Okay. All right. Well, then, those are the and yours is not a Facebook account, so we'll stop there. Thank you for coming on the show. It was great talking to you tonight. You really, this is an enjoyable show for me, and I hope we can do stuff again in the future when you have the time, you busy lady, you.
Thank you.
As for me, and my million shows that I do, tomorrow night on the Metal Hammer, we will be reviewing Sepultura, Machine Messiah. As I mentioned before, the dates that we're not doing on trial, I'm going to try to do because so-and-so made me. Of course, Gavin got first dibs because he won that's probably not going to make the Gambit movie, and B, we were supposed to do it last year, but, shit got in the way. So our late but still happening review of There Will Be Blood will be this Thursday at 10 p.m. Monday, source material, Yil Jesse Stacha. He'll be presenting his first round of So What You Reading. I actually got on that episode. I talked about Moon Knight. I talked about Batman Mad Love, simply the best Batman story, especially featuring Harley Quinn and the Joker, not that garbage Suicide Squad movie that came out. So go ahead and check out the So What You Reading special, 9 p.m. If you haven't checked out our 3-part episode on the Flintstones, please do. We are, especially the third episode, we had a lengthy discussion of the Polyamory Society. And you're thinking, what the hell does that got to do with the Flintstones? You'll have to listen because it does. It relates. But, yeah, we had a really, really interesting and lengthy discussion of the Polyamory Society in this country relative to the Flintstone comic book that DC put out. So check those out. They're all in the archives now on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. The next TV party will be a week from tonight. Robert Cooper, the Metal Coop, will be on to talk about his other favorite passion in life, anime, that is to say, Voltron, Legendary Defender, Season 2. It drops this Friday, the 20th of January. We're going to talk about it on the 24th of January. Metal Hammer of Doom, Firewind, Immortals the next night. And On Trial, our second episode, will be the 26th of January at 9:30. We will be putting Chris Nolan's Inception on trial. I believe I am defending a movie I haven't even watched yet. Hot diggity. So that's our next couple of shows. I'm not going to go any further because I could be reading off my list from now until August, and I've done enough of that. So without further ado, we are done for the night. I appreciate Ms. Wagner for coming on, and that's it. Just one real quick thing. I'm going to do another Netflix show based on food. We're going to do Chef's Table in a few weeks, and I'm going to bring on another podcast newbie, somebody who actually worked as in the cooking industry, to talk season 1 of Chef's Table. I don't know how often I'm going to do stuff like this, but I at least wanted to give Cooked and one season of Chef's Table a try. So we'll see how that goes. I'm excited about it. All right. If you've made it this far, God bless you. Hope you enjoyed the show. Be well, be safe, and behave.